Welcome to the Whole Health Podcast,
where a functional nutritionist and a biological dentist investigate the interconnectedness of your health.
Let's get started. Welcome back to the Whole Health Podcast, and I am really excited today to have my good friend, Jeremy Hyatt, joining us. And I just want to say a couple things about your background before we dive in, because we have so much to talk about today. So Jeremy Hyatt is the owner and lead personal trainer at Hyatt Strength and Wellness here in Portland, Oregon. And this is a really unique personal training gym. You specialize just on one-on-one training and conditioning sessions to maximize member success. You particularly have over 25 years of experience in your field, and you hold the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist credential along with a master's degree in kinesiology. Jeremy leads a team of 12 strength and wellness professionals from his flagship studio located in our little area of Northwest Portland near the clinic, so we get to share a lot of people. I do want to say a couple things just about your business, aside from you as your unique individual, because I think you've just started something that's and been running a strength and conditioning facility that does things differently than we see in most places. So when you are at Hyatt, you're in the trusted hands of highly skilled experts who listen to your needs and really meet you where you are. I can tell you because I have trained there. They are not trying to get you to their goals. They're trying to get you to your own goals. And you do provide a safe and desirable space that offers real results. You offer tailored precision training that addresses your client's strengths, weaknesses, goals, and lifestyles inside and outside of the gym. And you are local and family owned. I happen to know your wife very well. And you have a promise to the people that you work with, which is that you meet them where they are, you make them stronger, support their long-term health and wellness goals, and offer a bespoke experience that invites them into their own community and your community with open arms. Thanks for being here, Jeremy.
Oh, thanks for saying that. That was amazing. Yeah.
Well, I am really excited to have you here because I feel like with all of the access we have to information right now, it is really easy to get confused about how to use and exercise our bodies in a way that supports us now and into the future. But I also think there's been a trend, which I've felt is very exciting, away from just fitness for vanity to fitness for longevity and health span. And so I'm super excited to dive into that.
Yeah. I think when I started, just on that note, when I started, I'm almost 30 years now in the business, and the first 10, 15, maybe 20 years of my business was, I'm getting married in 4 months. I need to look great. And the last probably 3 to 5 years has really started to change to, I'm turning 40 next month, and I want to be in the best shape of my life when I turn 50. And you're like, whoa, that's so different than how this industry got started. It's still a relatively new industry, personal training. Mm-hmm. And so seeing those trends change is pretty cool.
How did you get into this field? What drew you here?
So I have an undergrad in education. I was a teacher first and foremost, but quickly realized that maybe public school education was not the best fit for me. I went back to do my master's in adapted physical education, working with people with special needs. And that was in the kinesiology department, adjacent to exercise physiology and athletic training. So I was in classes with, all of this kind of these cohorts, and working at a gym. I paid my way through school as a swim instructor and lifeguard, and the personal trainers were making a lot more money than I was. And I was I was a teacher and I was an athlete, and I was like, well, I could probably do personal training. So I started kind of transitioning out of the pool and onto the training floor. Enjoyed that kind of element of teaching and being athletic, and thought, well, I'll do this until I really do what I was originally going to do with my master's degree. And again, that was 1997. And I said, well, when I stop enjoying this, I'll do what I was, kind of went to school for. And, here we are almost 30 years later, and I still enjoy it a lot. So maybe I'll get to my master's degree at some point, but so far it's working out okay.
Go back to the public schools.
Yeah. Probably not back to the public schools. Yeah.
Interesting. So, kind of tracking back to what we were talking about with the shift in mentality around what your clients want now. How has that changed? I know you, so I know you spend a lot of time in research and you're paying attention to the science, but how has that changed how you show up every day and what you're offering to people?
Yeah. So we have this team of 12 trainers, and they're all very well educated, and they're all very credentialed. And I really see our job as trainers is being able to translate everything that's coming out on social media and podcasts. And, there is a ton of information, and most of it is very well-meaning. We have to distill all that information and then be able to translate to clients as they need it in ways that they can use it. And so they can kind of separate the fads from the science that, we're strength coaches first and foremost. So our biggest goal is getting people stronger. But in that, we also have to look at sleep and nutrition and mental health. And we really need to be able to look at a really comprehensive picture of their health. We see ourselves as part of a much larger team of professionals with functional nutritionists and dental professionals and sleep specialists and chiropractors. And, we can't do everything ourselves, and most practitioners can't. But we can help to synthesize all of that information, which means we have to stay on top of all the research and what people are saying rightfully or wrongfully that might be getting into our clients' heads and dictating where they're going. So we really just try to help them kind of quiet all the noise out there and find a plan that works for them, for their goals. It's going to be sustainable long-term. Again, it's not a quick fix. This is a lifestyle. And I see clients now that I've seen for 24 years.
Wow.
And that's the approach that we take. Obviously, not everybody's going to be with us for that long, but we try to set up the foundation where they could be if they wanted to, both with our trainers and with our members, our clients.
That's incredible.
So I'm curious to know, what are the most joyful experiences? What does that look and feel like when you're working with clients? And I'm also curious, what's your greatest frustration as a strength and training coach? Because I imagine there's some psychology that you're dealing with and all this stuff. So just kind of lay that out there.
So everybody comes to us with the best intentions, right? They want to get fitter, and they may not know exactly what that means, but they know they want to be more healthy. And so one of two things happen, and I think this will speak exactly to what you're asking. One thing happens is that most of the people that come to us, a lot of the people that come to us are relatively new to exercise, or they've been away from exercise for a long time. We're very much a general population gym, and a lot of times people are coming to us without a lot of training experience. There comes a time in their kind of training life where they go from dreading exercise, not feeling great when they're exercising, to the point where they only feel good after they exercise. This switch flips, and now they feel great when they get done. Now they want that feeling of the post-exercise kind of glow. When that switch flips for somebody, it's pretty amazing. And you know that you got them, right? At that point, you know that they're going to take care of themselves for the rest of their life. They don't want to go back from that. We kind of say that in 6 months with us, you should know everything you need to do, right? You should know how to work out. You should know what to eat. You should know how much sleep you need. You should know the foundation. You may stay with us for the rest of your life because you appreciate all the other things we bring. Maybe that's community. Maybe that's variety. Maybe that's just somebody to push or accountability. Like, all the other things may keep you there, but you should know what to do. And when that switch flips and they feel so much better when they work out, pretty awesome. On the flip side of that, you have people that say, here's what I want. And then they think that 1 or 2 sessions a week is going to get them there, and they get frustrated with not seeing progress. And those are the people who are super stressed out at work, who don't get enough sleep, who sabotage themselves with diet, who, kind of step away from the gym and do a lot of the wrong things. But we as trainers take that really personally. Like, if you're my client, if you're not making progress, like, it would be easy to go, well, you're not doing all your stuff, but it's my job to help you find ways for you to be more successful. And if they're not, I take that really personally. And so trainers get like, we're really emotionally connected to what we do. We're there because we love it. And so we want people to be successful. And when you see that behavior that's going to prohibit it, that can be frustrating. Very rarely do they come back to us and say, it's your fault. Usually they're they're self-aware enough to be like, I could be better when I step away, but it's still, that's tough for us. So
that makes sense. I'm going to ask you probably the most basic of basic questions, but I think it is an important starting off point in the conversation around the nuts and bolts of exercise. Like, what is it? Why is it? Et cetera. But when you look at health, longevity, health span, the people in their 80s that are still functioning, the people in their 20s that aren't functioning, why do we need to exercise? Why?
Well, I think if you look at any of the morbidity factors that are out there, cancer, heart disease, dementia, diabetes, the number one recommendation for preventing any of those diseases is exercise. So there's strength training, there's cardiovascular training, there's very different benefits from both of those. What we try to do is merge those in the best ways that we know how, to make sure that people are obviously getting the right prescriptions of kind of both of those modalities, and they both bring very different things to the table. But exercise in general, be it strength training or cardiovascular, just sets the foundation for reducing the risk of all of those, strong morbidity factors.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, well, I take a walk every day, so I exercise, right? But they come in and they see you. How are you building out from the most basic, I move every day, to I'm optimizing my fitness? What are those foundations? What are those steps? What are you aiming for their best results?
Right. So, all of our clients, we want to see daily movement in. So, we have kind of a series of boxes that we like to check. Daily movement is one of them. That's neat. That's non-exercise activity, right? And so then you go, okay, so you're moving every day. What else do we need to do? We need to build in strength training. So we're looking at, generally 2 to 3 days, 30 to 45 minutes a week of dedicated strength training. So we can talk more in detail about what that entails, but you're going to get very different things physiologically from strength training than you are from just general walking, right? The addition of lean muscle mass is going to change. You're not going to get that from walking alone. So it gives stimulus. It's very different than that. And then when you talk about cardiovascular exercise, right, more akin to walking would be a very low level cardiovascular exercise. But when you push higher intensity cardiovascular exercise, then you get a lot of benefits that you can't just get from walking alone. So we take all of those things, and then, again, we'll match in with food and sleep and all that kind of stuff. But strength training, like, one of the biggest misconceptions I think that we see with people is that let's say they do spin class 3 times a week. And so they don't have to do leg strength, right? I don't have to work out my legs because I spin 3 times a week, but it's so different. And when we look at them on like an in-body scan where we can look at lean muscle mass segmentally, they spin a bunch, but their legs are under-muscled. Right. And so we know that if you're under-muscled, as you get older, especially, you're going to be more prone to mobility issues. So runners, we kind of see the same thing. They might have the cardiovascular capacity pretty well dialed in, but running in and of itself is not going to build lean muscle mass the same way that heavy strength training is going to build. So we have to look at the person who comes in, what they're doing, what their goals are, but we have kind of general parameters for what we want everybody to look like. I know you guys use in-body tests, so whether we're looking at in-body or DEXA or any kind of muscle mass evaluation, we want to see people that are adequately muscled across all of their body segments. we can then apply stimulus to that through strength training, and then so we can test, add stimulus, and then retest to make sure that their muscle mass is well above the kind of minimum requirements for their frame size. And the same thing with cardiovascular capacity. These are things that we can test with VO2 max or simple tests in the gym. Add stimulus, develop programs, write prescriptions in that kind of arena, and then retest them and make sure that that cardiovascular capacity is increasing. If you're simply walking, you're probably not putting enough stress on the system to improve your VO2 max, to improve your muscle strength or muscle power. And these we know are great predictors for longevity.
Okay, I had a question for you. I've always been curious about this. I'm down at the gym. There's the whole free weights section, and there's the whole section of like a bazillion machines. Particularly like when I think of things like going to grab either a couple dumbbells or whatever and doing squats free weight style versus using like a sled machine or something. What are your thoughts about pros, cons? Do you find that there's a better pathway? I mean, I hate to be black or white about it, but what are your thoughts on that, free weights versus machines?
Yeah, so I think when I came into the industry, it was all machines. It was all selectorized machines. There was very little emphasis on free weights. Kettlebells were just starting to come onto the scene. I was telling a story the other day about how I was hired to teach a dance troupe how to use the stability ball. How to use the stability ball. I predate the stability ball. So we had a very limited kind of repertoire of things, and it was very machine dominant. Over the years, kind of functional fitness became the really popular tagline, and life doesn't happen sitting down and pressing against something. And so machines kind of started to get a pretty bad rap unless you were really muscle specific, like a bodybuilder, and you wanted to really dial in on one particular area super carefully. Like functionally, free weights, suspension, body weight had more kind of real world applications. And so free weights and all that kind of stuff became way more popular. Our studio we don't have any machines because we just don't have the space for it. So we have to have stuff that fits that can do a lot of different things because we don't have 100,000 square foot gym to put machines in. And now you're starting to see machines come back into popularity a little bit, and not just for bodybuilding. We use them a lot for rehab. We use them a lot for beginning exercisers because you can control movement a lot more. And so machines are great, but just like running's great or strength, like it just needs to be balanced out with free weights and body weight, with things that challenge you in other ways as well. So I'm not partial to either one. Again, we're predominantly free weights, kettlebells, suspension, body weight, just because of space. Mm-hmm. But I think free weights machines rather have a place in fitness. It's probably not going to go away anytime soon.
Sure.
I'm thinking about, I've had a lot of goes at fitness in my life. Stops, go, stop, go. I've had a lot of that in my life. And I think I have misconceptions, even though I follow the science now. And so I want to get granular because I'm curious, and I think other people are as well, about some of these things you measure or some of these things you're paying attention to. Okay. Like, what is VO2 max? Why do we care? Why do we measure that? Why do we want it to get better from like a wellness today, but wellness tomorrow perspective?
So simply put, VO2 max is your body's ability to uptake oxygen. So when you do any kind of work, your body needs oxygen. That's circulated by the blood supply. As that blood supply comes through the lungs, you extract oxygen from it. If you have a high VO2 max, you get a lot of oxygen when that blood comes by. And so if you're efficient at extracting oxygen, your heart rate can stay lower and your respiration stay lower. So you do under the same amount of, kind of exposed force, your body has to work less hard. So if you have a high VO2 max, you're just efficiently extracting oxygen from the blood. It's the best side of fitness, cardiovascular fitness that we have. And you'll see that on a range of 10 on like cardiac rehab patients up to 80 for like Olympic cross country skiers or rowers. Those are kind of the high, really professional cyclists, really high VO2 max. So what we know is that as you age, activities of daily living can become harder and harder. If you are efficient at extracting oxygen, if you're cardiovascularly healthy, those activities stay easier, right? It's easier to perform things when your body is working proficiently. So it's an easy test to make sure that that kind of cardiorespiratory system is working effectively. And you can see it with input go up and up and up. There's all kinds of different ways to measure VO2 max. Some are very lab-based and expensive, and some are more kind of approximations or, you can do a step test and run it through a simple calculator online to get a predictor for VO2 max, and that can be really effective for people too.
How often do you measure that?
For most people, once or twice a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially the more expensive tests. The more expensive tests are also generally pretty uncomfortable.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're going to get a VO2 max, you want to work up to your max level. So generally, you're going as hard as you can and then hitting stop. Usually it's about a 12 to 15 minute test. You're wearing a mask that measures gas exchange, and they're brutal. So most people don't want to do that more than a time or two a year. And really it takes some time to make changes in that. So it's not something you would do monthly or, even probably quarterly.
I've certainly been avoiding it. Yeah.
Yeah,
it sounds uncomfortable, but it is a helpful. We talk about this a lot. What you measure, right? Then it gets managed. Yep. Exactly. So you're thinking about somebody's overall long-term health, and you're thinking, okay, well, we need to support their VO2 max. We need that's a cardiovascular marker. Oxygenation. I think about that from a nutritional perspective, and cellular metabolism and the health of our body, right? But there's been this interesting shift in the conversation, at least in the functional medicine world, that we're paying very close attention to. And I'm definitely sending more people your way for this exact reason. And that is the whole muscle is the organ of longevity that's being talked about, right? It's kind of been a coined term. Why are we saying that?
Well, I think for a couple of reasons. I think probably one of the things that's getting the most talk right now is its relationship to glucose regulation. So the higher lean muscle mass you have, the more insulin sensitivity you're going to have. And so as we see these rises in type 2 diabetes, I think alongside of that, the emphasis on lean muscle mass goes hand in hand with trying to reduce reliance on medications and other interventions with treating conditions like that. So we talk about activities of daily living. We talked about that with VO2, but also, having the strength to go up and down curbs and up and down stairs and reach up and down out of cabinets and get up and down off the couch, like being strong enough to carry on your regular life and not be dependent on other people, not be at a fall risk. That's certainly that's muscle based and longevity based. We talk about bone density and how strength training helps to either prevent bone loss, in some cases maybe reverse some bone loss, but bone density and strength training, especially heavy strength training, are very well linked. Neurological health is getting a lot of talk with heart rate training and exertion and what that does both chemically, with dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine, and then growth factors in the brain, both cardiovascular and strength training and their kind of impacts on that. We talked about glucose regulation, but all of those factors, kind of lead into that conversation of muscle as this organ of longevity.
It's, I don't know if you guys are going to relate to this as much, just based on your gender, but as a female in this culture.
I thought it was going to be a bald thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, that too. No, we're not going there at this moment. But one of the things that, I was a child of the 80s. I grew up in a Jane Fonda / like Suzanne Summers / also, you should probably starve yourself if you want to be thin mentality. I mean, that's really what we were being told. Like, eat your low fat, your low calorie, everything, right? Fast forward, I'm in functional medicine and I'm seeing women become osteoporotic and cognitively declined in their 50s and 60s. And we're saying, okay, well, how do you build tissue if you can't eat? How do you build tissue if you eat 1,000 calories a day? How do you restore tissue? How does your brain function? How do you make bone if you're on 1,000 calories a day to stay thin? Well, the math doesn't work. You need to eat enough food to get enough vitamins and minerals. Yes, you need fuel. You need your protein, your fat, your carbohydrates, right? In varying degrees. But you need all of your minerals and vitamins. And so the conversation that has become so prominent in my practice is, I need you to eat so your tissues are healthy, so your body can regenerate. But that means you have to have lean muscle, because that's how you burn it 24 hours a day. I need you to burn the energy, but have all the nutrients that come with it. And I don't think there's any way around it. I don't think there's any way around this math. You need to have muscle to burn the energy so you can eat enough food to maintain your body into your elder years in wellness, right?
Absolutely.
It's just been such a shift.
And again, I think, we're seeing that change in the studio as well, from the aesthetics, the vanity, and the, extremely restricted caloric diets, to people that don't care as much anymore about what they weigh. Yeah. And again, testing, being able to look at lean muscle mass, really kind of having those types of tests has really changed our business. It keeps our trainers more accountable to their job, because we get to see, like, is what we're doing working? Mm-hmm. But also, if somebody comes in and let's just say they weigh 130 pounds on day one, and we go 3 months and we retest them on the InBody and they still weigh 130 pounds, and they go, I've been working my butt off for 3 months and I weigh the same. And you go, hold on, you lost 3 pounds of fat and gained 3 pounds of muscle, and your body composition went from 32 to 29. And they're like, oh, okay. I'm cool with that, right? So we're seeing less reliance on scale weight, and more emphasis on healthy and adequate eating, lean muscle mass, body composition, stuff like that.
Yeah, so movement away from BMI, our measurement.
Movement away from BMI.
Yeah.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
So all this talk about lean muscle, I'm curious, in your business or just, as a mentor, leader to your clients, what emphasis is there on stretching, massage? Because I think of some of the people who I know who are like in their 70s now that used to do a lot of weightlifting, and now they just, they never focused a lot on, staying open and flexible. So how does that work in your recipe or prescriptions for your clients?
It's a little bit case by case, just like everything. But let me walk you through a typical session with us, and you'll kind of see how it fits in a general term. So people come in, we have 50-minute sessions. They'll spend the first 2 or 3 minutes doing some sort of warm up. It might be on the air bike, it might be walking, it might be doing some dynamic stretching on the turf. And then there'll usually be a 5 to 7 minute period of mobility work. So that's going to be dependent on the client. So here's where you're talking about, like, are those joints moving through a range of motion well? Are we just getting tighter and more restricted through strength training, or are we kind of maintaining good function in addition to building lean muscle mass? And so if we're doing a workout that's heavily upper body, shoulder intensive, there might be a lot more shoulder mobility work that comes during that kind of movement prep period of their warm up. If somebody has really bad ankles and they don't squat well because of it, we might do more ankle mobility work. So again, kind of is going to be a little bit specific. And then they're going to go through a short series of power work. So that would be like sprinting, throwing, jumping, right? Something that's going to really hit those kind of high end, sets the central nervous system on fire, like really like they're fresh, but they're warmed up, but they're still very fresh. So they're going to do a little bit, let's just call it jumping, right? Some plyometric type work. Settle into a group of strength circuits. There might be 2 or 3 circuits of 2 to 3 exercises. These are your presses and your pulls and your squats and your deadlifts and all that kind of stuff designed around them and their goals. And then the last thing they're going to do is a little bit of probably more static stretching, like another 3 minutes, 5 minutes of kind of cool down, kind of re-enter that parasympathetic nervous system, some deeper breathing, some stretching. So it has a place in the session itself, right? So a couple times a week at least, we're getting them to move through some of those things. And then depending on the person, injury history, performance history, how they feel when they stretch. Like not everybody feels great after a long stretching session. For some people, like those really prolonged stretching sessions, I think, set them back a little bit. Like too much of some things can be wrong for people. And so we really try to find a balance of, they always have homework with us. They don't get to come in twice a week and then we, pat them on the back and be like, good luck out there. We'll see you next Tuesday. And nothing's supposed to happen, right? They have homework. They've got their cardiovascular work. They've got, kind of their nutritional guidelines, and stretching mobility can be a big part of that. But yeah, moving well is really important to us. And usually that's going to involve at least, a decent amount of mobility and stretching work every week.
Nice.
You're hitting all the marks.
We're trying to hit all the marks,
Yeah. Is there anything else when you're looking at all the chatter out there that you really feel is misperceived, miscommunicated, misunderstood in the general population around fitness?
Yeah. I think there's some really, again, well-intentioned businesses out there that are trying to be the one stop. And so, especially kind of these high intensity interval training where some of it is cardiovascular and some of it is strength, and it's very high paced, and it's a really hard workout. I think that those are great at times, but I don't think they can be the one stop shop that people they'll do these classes 5-6 times a week, and that's all that they do. There's a great sense of community in those programs, which I love. There's accountability, which I love. There's high intensity, which I love. But again, too much of anything can be tricky. What generally happens in those programs is the cardiovascular work is not hard enough to really push that VO2 up. The strength training is not hard enough to really push that lean muscle mass up. Maybe it'll get you from 0 up a little bit, but then you're going to probably plateau pretty hard because you just can't progressive overload with strength training because the intervals aren't really set up scientifically enough to promote VO2 max or mitochondrial health or something along those lines that we can be a little bit more prescriptive with. So we see people just really burn themselves out on that kind of thing. Like the intensity, again, is great and the community is great, but I think it gets a little bit too repetitive, and that can lead to, at least at best, it can lead to plateaus.
And at worst, we see a lot of injury in those situations.
Yeah, I think there can be consequences to that can be pretty severe depending on how far you go along that line. But and again, I think they're trying to do the right thing. But it's just really hard to put all of the right things into 1 hour, 1 hour a day. Like it takes a little bit better balance than that. So anything that we see, so many things on Instagram that are really like, you should do all zone 2 training, or you should do all, everything should be a Tabata, or everything should be, we've had trainers in the past who don't believe in cardiovascular exercise in the past, who don't believe, like there are so many dogmas out there that people get caught up in. And again, I think they're well-meaning. I think they're trying to do the best that they can for the people in their community. But what we know is that there's a balance of things that really probably, just like with nutrition, there's a balance of things that probably works best for most people. And again, that's what we're trying to help people realize, is how that all fits together.
I love that comprehensive approach, and that's why I send so many people to you, because I feel like you can't eat your way out of a sedentary life, as it turns out.
What?
You can't outrun a jelly donut.
I tried so hard. And the other side of that too is I have the benefit of seeing people's labs and understanding what's going on with their biochemistry. And the collaboration is really fun, because if somebody's anemic, for instance, but they have a fitness goal, it's going to be really hard to get them there if they're not getting enough iron, back to oxygenation. And there's a million other things, but the personalization of what you and your team does is just really special, and we see people get great results. So it's really great to work with you in that way.
Appreciate that. And that's the great thing about having so much time with people, is you really get to turn over, just like you do in your practice, you get to turn over a lot of different stones. And through the course of weeks and months of being with somebody once or twice or 3 times a week for an hour, you get to hear all the stories, and you get to learn what makes them tick, and you get to learn, why this stuff is so important. And that really helps to develop customized programs that really are going to be long-term effective for somebody and have a tremendous amount of meaning. We hear all the time, like, I want to be able to get on the ground with my grandkids. And it's like kind of cliche, but when you see that that's actually happening, that people have changed their life and can now get up and down off the ground, you're like, that's real. That's real. And a pretty cool process to be a part of. And one of the beautiful things about having that relationship, that one-on-one relationship with people, that you would never get, in a group spinning class, for example. Like, right. It's just not, it's nothing against group spinning. Again, it's great, but you're not going to have that kind of relationship with each one of your clients. Mm-hmm. And we're very lucky in that regard. Very lucky.
Yeah. And Kelly and I talk a lot about the movement we're seeing towards health span, towards longevity. And I feel like every touch point a person has, whether it's with their dentist, their nutritionist, their doctor, their trainer, where the education that it's all connected, the education that health is a whole picture, it's everything, the more we're going to see this movement continue to blossom. And that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, I think about the healthfulness I experienced with my maternal grandparents, both of whom lived to be 94, who gardened their entire adult lives, and it wasn't just about like, well, we ate fresh food out of our garden, but it was the mechanics of, beyond just picking the blueberry bush, like the whole back 40, it's like, that's a lot of physical work and movement. Man, this has been awesome. And we could keep going, I'm sure, for a long time.
Yeah.
We like to end by asking, this is the Whole Health Podcast, like to know if you could share something with our listeners about what whole health means to you, what would that be?
I think that means being able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, for as long as you want to do it, without having any limitations because of your physical health. For us, it's kind of living this life without limits, right? I don't want people who would love to go do something but don't think that their body can put up with it. So for me, whole health is being strong enough and fit enough to do anything you want, whenever you want to do it, and for that to go on as long as possible.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Inspirational. Thank you for being here, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me.
You.
Yeah, it's awesome. Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Whole Health Podcast.
If you enjoyed what you heard today, please follow us on social media and wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can find out more about us at thewholehealthpodcast.com.
You can find me on my website, blodgettdentalcare.com.
And you can find me at bioloungepdx.com or learn more about my organic soluble fiber supplement, Fluorosophy, at thinkfluorosophy.com.
We look forward to seeing you next time.